Welcome to Oyate Today. Oyate in Lakota means people. Brought to you by Native Sun News Today. Hi, welcome to Oyate Today. I am your host, Richie Richards. Oyate Today is produced by Tim and Jackie Gallego. Tim is an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux tribe. Our guest tonight is A. Gay Kingman, Executive Director of the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association, based here in Rapid City. Thank you so much for being here, ma'am.
Thank you for inviting me.
This is awesome. This is going to be a great discussion. I'm excited to have you here, and once again, thank you so much for being here tonight. Gay, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're born and raised, kind of those fundamentals and basics of who you are?
I was born and raised at Old Shine Agency, which is 90 feet underwater in the Missouri River. Wow. So I'm an original water protector.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, the town was moved to Eagle Butte. And so a little bit about myself. My parents were part of the move, helping Shine River Agency move to Eagle Butte. Mm-hmm. But I went on to school and got my four-year degree at Northern State, and eventually my master's and my doctoral work at Arizona State University. Mm-hmm. But throughout the years, I've 25 years in teaching and college president and superintendent of schools, and then I guess it was in 1988 or so, Wayne Duchesneau was chairman of Shine River, ran for president of NCAI, National Congress of American Indians, and he ran on the slate that to clean it up and improve it, because at that time the National Congress was having difficulty financially, and so he ended up winning the election, and then I got up to leave the room for a little bit when the board was meeting, and I came back and they said, "You're the new executive director."
Wow.
So it thrust me into running Indian organizations and Indian affairs, and I think once you're an educator, you're always an educator. So that only prepared me for served as the executive director at NCAI then. Sure,
sure. Let's take it back a little bit. So, as the executive director now of the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association, can you give us some history and some background on that particular organization?
Well, it first started out as the Aberdeen Area Tribal Chairmen's Association, but there was really no official entity. It wasn't incorporated. The chairman just got together. And so after my stint at NCI, and then my husband and I started the National Indian Gaming Association, and then I came home and the tribes asked me to start a real formal organization. So I did that, and it's been going since. That was in 2020, is that right? No, 1920, no, I'm getting mixed up. But anyway, we started 20 years ago, we started the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association. And we are a federally chartered organization under U.S. government. And it's larger and better, I guess, than your 501c3, or because we can do much more with it. But the chairmen come together. There's 16 tribes in the Great Plains region. And the current chairman is Chairman Harold Frazier. And then the vice chairman is Chairman Flying Hawk from Yankton. And the secretary treasurer is Chairman Reeder from Flandreau. And so they'll serve several-year terms. And so I'm in contact with them most of the time. And then, but daily I send out information to all of the chairmen on various things, legislation or budget or whatever's happening. And so that's kind of how the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association started. But the important thing is they come together collectively and take up, all the issues, difficult issues, and they might pass a resolution or take action or plan strategy. But we've never had any disagreements. After everything is thoroughly discussed, everyone moves ahead with the action, strategy, what to do.
What would be some of those strategies, and what are they collectively working on, say, in today's world? What's some of those important key issues that the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association is working on then?
Well,
I'm sure there's a lot, but I just kind of want to get an idea generally.
There's a lot. Current, of course, is the budget. With Trump not digging in and wanting his wall, and Congress not passing a budget, all of our tribes are in, hard situations because the funding comes from Interior or HHS, and if you don't get that funding, now the fiscal year for government starts October 1, and so we've been this long without a budget.
Wow.
And so Congress did not do their job in passing it, and now we're in a stalemate with Congress and Trump. So we hope that that'll happen soon. But if you look at the budget, there's over 150 programs that come to a tribe, and that's funded by the U.S. government, all the way from social service to tribal courts to law enforcement to roads and all of this. So our tribes are hurting right now. And so that's big. And the other thing, I guess, is the environment. Our tribes are very, very conscious of protecting our environment, our water. And now there's great concern with the pipelines being laid and the man camps going to be set up within 6 months.
Yeah, and that's here in South Dakota then, right?
South Dakota and Nebraska.
And Nebraska.
It's starting up in, actually up in North Dakota, and coming on down all the way through Nebraska too. So it affects, although they're skirting the actual reservation, but it's the environment still.
It will have a direct impact on the reservation, even though it's skirting the outside of the reservation.
And then the Oglala Aquifer is right under.
And so for our audience members that aren't familiar with man camps, can you kind of explain what a man camp is and what those dangers are posed by those man camps and what that's about? Because those are a genuine fear within the Native American community, especially near the reservation. So if you could explain kind of some of that.
Well, in order to accommodate all of the workers that come in, they're saying there will be 1,400 at least in a camp. And so maybe the economy might, improve a little bit from what they spend, but in North Dakota was an example when they came in the Bakken, and the tribal leaders up there tell me that it brought an influx of things as well. Drugs became more prevalent, and sexual
violence,
trafficking,
rape, assault, trafficking, all that.
All that. So there is great concern, and particularly if they're near the reservation boundaries. And I don't know, it's not just the reservation that will be affected. It'll be everybody, the way it was in North Dakota. And so that is one thing that the tribal leaders are wanting to strategize on and see what we can do. I don't know if there's any chance of stopping it. I know there's been lawsuits, but it's a hard thing because it's not just Indians that will be affected.
And it's part of a larger discussion too with the sex trafficking and you have the MMIW, the Murder of Missing Indigenous Women's movements.
Oh, yes.
All that's going to be affected by these man camps. So, Gay, let's take a break. But when we get back, we're going to learn a little bit more about Gay Kingman and the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association here in Rapid City. We'll be back after word from our sponsors.
Native Sun News has been voted the best weekly newspaper in its class for 2015 by the South Dakota and North Dakota Newspaper Associations. You can find a copy of the Native Sun News at many businesses and vending machines in Rapid City and the surrounding area, and on all 9 reservations. We publish every Wednesday, so advertisers and subscribers can reach our diverse readership by calling 605-721-1266. The Native Sun News covers the other side of the story.
You can't predict life's ups and downs. You just give it all you've got to stay on top. But it's easier with a partner like Security First Bank. Since 1898, we've been riding with you through the country's biggest ups and downs. And this is where we'll stay. Security First Bank, a relationship you can count on. Member FDIC.
Thank you.
Kindness. Pass it on. A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
More than 2 million men and women have served in our military since 9/11. Now, many of them are transitioning back into civilian life. They're considering career options, writing resumes, starting businesses. ACP AdvisorNet can help. ACP AdvisorNet is a nonprofit online community where Americans can offer career advice to those who have served. Now we can serve those who served us by helping them to find their next career. Visit acpadvisornet.org.
Hi, welcome back to Oyate Today. Once again, our guest tonight is A. Gay Kingman, Executive Director of the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association here in Rapid City. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
And it's been a great discussion. I really enjoy what we've been talking about so far. But we talked about some of the work that the Great Plains, the Tribal Chairmen's Association is working on currently. And so what would be some of the goals for 2019? What are some of the goals that this collection of tribal leadership wants to achieve in 2019? What are you really hard-pressed to accomplish with this group?
Well, to have more stability, I guess, in our finances for the communities and the tribal governments. We have worked really hard to try to get direct funding for roads, highways, maintenance. Schools are another thing, but if you look at our priorities, social service is one of our top priorities, which includes Indian child welfare and all of that. So, and tribal courts. One thing we run into is our tribes here in the Great Plains are large tribes, and we run full service governments. But a lot of tribes nationwide are not. You know, they might have 100 people in the tribe, and they don't run a full service government. They don't run law enforcement departments or road departments or school departments. And so we find ourselves kind of in a minority, I mean, because the majority are small. And so we're always trying to, I don't want to say fight, but we're always trying to have other people recognize that and get actual the needed funding for our tribes. So that's a big one. We're always after.
So really, it's a matter of like, okay, so this area, this region has large populations on the reservations and in those tribal communities. So they actually need more funding because of their full service. I didn't really realize that, I guess.
Full service governments,
compared,
just like any city or state, you know. And then of course that goes with our sovereignty. It's a sovereign right due to our treaties. And so we say that education's treaty money because it's written right into our treaty 1868, so is health care. And so we stand on that, we stand on our treaties. And so that's always our goal. It's, there's never enough funding, and a lot of people don't understand that because we have to go get it. I mean, we can't, it just doesn't come, you know. And that's a big one, and of course the environment. You know, that will be with us. I'm really worried for this as these things develop with the pipeline, but also protecting the Missouri because, you know, there's sacred sites along that Missouri that we have, we're trying to protect. There's no policing ability to protect those sacred sites. There's been destruction, graves and like that. And then education. In our region, we have some of the highest number of Indian-controlled schools. And I'm very proud of that because our forefathers or ancestors set it up. So we teach our own. You know, we have our own Indian schools. And the same way with our Indian colleges. We have the most of any region except for, of course, well, Navajo has a lot more, but they're large.
And that's something that you've been involved in since the late 1960s out in Minneapolis. Whenever you were, what was it called? It's called the, excuse me, let me look here in my notes, the Red Schoolhouse.
Yes.
There in Minneapolis.
Right.
And you set that up as a way to begin, or as part of the beginning of that movement
Yes.
of protecting Indian education. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that was back in the early AIM days. And my husband, Chuck Robertson, was the, we both of us were educated, had our degrees, and all of the children, Indian children in Minneapolis were being pushed out. I mean, they didn't have the things that they felt, you know, inadequate. And so we set up a school for them right down on Franklin Avenue. And Chuck was the first principal. But it was beautiful because when the children came, they sang our songs. We had the drum. And I know some people today here that are in tribal government that went through that, and they remember it. And so you, along with academics, you learn who you are as an Indian person. And it's great, and that's the benefit of Indian schools.
So back then, were you meeting the state standards for what the state of Minnesota required then?
Oh yes, the academics was fully credited, and at the same time we were doing our own Indian language and culture and spiritualism.
Wow, that was all part of the curriculum, part of that growth. Why was that important then for urban Indians in Minneapolis and Minnesota at that time period? Why was it important for young Indian children to be a part of that school? And why was it, I mean, other than the marginalization that they may have experienced from the regular school system, why was that important for an Indian child to be in a class or in a school like that?
Well, I guess two things that kept them grounded on who they were. I mean, they were just thrown into an environment unfamiliar to them, and so they were able to keep who they were as Indians. And then secondly, it taught them. I mean, they learned all of the songs, and they learned, you know, to the spiritualism and what the drum means, and that's the way it should be. You know, and I think that's why a lot of our Indian schools today on Pine Ridge and Cheyenne River are still trying to do that. But here again, it goes to budget, and our schools don't have adequate funding.
Isn't that something that 50 years ago, the same exact needs, and then here we are 50 years later, the same exact needs for Indian children, and it still comes down to budget and funding in those basic needs for those programs. Could you talk to me a little bit more about your role in the National Congress of the American Indian? I know you touched on it in the beginning here, but could you talk to me a little bit about that? Because from what I understand, you helped with that kind of resurgence of the National Congress of the American Indian and helped to rejuvenate it and bring it back up to what it is today.
Well, if you look at the history of National Congress, a lot of the Sioux people started it. And we served in administration. It was the same thing that we do with the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association, the coalition building and the continuity and the decision making, and by a large group of tribes. And so that part is greatly needed. And although we're so diverse, in our tribal leaders, but at that time, the National Congress was down financially. And so there's a man that I always credit and I have the utmost respect for, and his name was Francis Killer. And he's passed on now. But he was the first and only Indian auditor I know. I mean, I know a lot of CPAs, but he was instrumental in putting the accountability and the records in shape at the National Congress. And his son, of course, is Kevin Keller.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And another one of our leaders. But we need people, we need a lot of our people to go into that field, I think. And so we were able to set the National Congress of American Indians back on a good, accountable standard. And it just kept going upwards to where it is today. And I think it's in good shape.
It is, it is. And Gay, we're going to take a break here, but when we get back, we'll learn a little bit more about A. Gay Kingman and her role with the Great Plains Tribal Chairmen's Association. We'll be back after a word from our sponsors.
I want some more.
What's he doing?
But he can't.
Look at him. It's just not done.
Please, sir, I want some more.
More? More?
More? Please, sir.
He has asked for!
Thank you.
What?
Well, he did say please. Sir.
Yes, he did. And thank you.
Yeah, and thank you.
He's a wonderful boy. A delightful boy.
Please, and thank you. Pass it on.
Thank you.
I used to think news is news. It's all the same. But it's not. There's a big difference between local broadcast news and cable news. See, local stations are part of my community, connecting me to local news, weather, and sports on every device. It makes sense. Get the news from the people I trust who actually live here. No agenda, no bias like on cable shout shows or social media, just facts. For news I can trust, I stay local. Support your local stations. Text TV to 52886 today.
Youth and Family Services Prenatal to 5 Head Start program is enrolling now. This is a free preschool program for children ages 3 to 5 and a home visiting program for children prenatal to age 3. Both programs offer family support opportunities. If you are pregnant or have a child 5 years old or younger, call today to inquire about this free family program designed to enhance children's physical, social, emotional, and intellectual development. Give your child a head start with Head Start. Call today.
Hi, welcome to Oyate today. Welcome back to Oyate today, excuse me. Once again, our guest tonight is A. Gay Kingman, and we've been having a great discussion about her role with the Great Plains Tribal Chairman Association and some other things and some other accomplishments you've had in your life. So thank you once again for being here. I understand recently you were honored in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you were honored with LaDonna Harris. Could you talk to me about that, please?
Well, they called us Trailblazers.
Oh, cool.
And LaDonna and I go way back to our DC's days and the work we did. And anyway, there's a organization that has sprung up that's great. It's a national Native political action, and it's out of Colorado. And they were instrumental in really getting out the vote and getting a lot of our Indian people elected in various places. State legislature, national. And so they invited me down to Albuquerque, and LaDonna and I were honored, and we got to tell our stories about early days and working and, you know, all of the things that we did. And so it was good. It was real good. And I'm so proud of all of these young leaders that are here today. And I'm not worried about the future because I see these young leaders that are doing so much and taking us forward.
And it's persons like yourself and LaDonna who have really, you know, trailblazers. I mean, you're kind of modest about it, but you've really set and blazed the trail for these young women, these young ladies, especially the ones that have been recently elected into office. So what does that mean for you then to kind of know that your life kind of affected and kind of set a trail for them? And we can be realistic about that because that's what it is. It's persons like yourself that really went out there and pushed the envelope and made things possible. So how do you feel about that?
It's wonderful. But you know, when you're working, you don't think about, you know, I'm going to be a trailblazer or whatever, you know, the work is there and you need to get it done. And that's what you do. You just, for Indian people, and you dedicate, I know I've dedicated my life to doing that. And so, and I see that in a lot of these young people. And when I tell people some of the stories about what happened, you know, when we took on Trump with the National Indian Gaming Association and when we fought tax and the Ways and Means Committee, and I say, well, you didn't think about it at the time, but you did it. And that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, you just get in there and go do your work for the day and accomplish the goals. And I understand you have a beautiful medal there, and you told me a little bit about it earlier. But could you talk to us about that medal that's on your coat there?
Yes, this is my great grandfather was killed at Little Bighorn, Dog's Backbone, and consequently my grandfather and sisters went to Canada with Sitting Bull and came back eventually. But so when Senator Campbell introduced legislation into Congress to honor our Indians out were at Little Bighorn, I was able to testify and really try to push that legislation through. And we got it. The legislation passed, and it took 2 tries.
So was that a matter of getting a monument up there then to honor them?
Yes.
That's so awesome.
And so now there's a monument to the American Indians. There never was before. It was just to Custer.
Hey, thank you so much, Gay, for being here tonight. I want to thank our guest, A. Kingman. I want to thank our producers, our sponsors. I want to thank Prairie Edge for hosting our show tonight. And I want to thank you for making Oyate today a part of your night. You've been watching Oyate Today, brought to you by Native Sun News Today.